talking about this book is very difficult. I have this halting speech pattern because part of what my mother's schizophrenia involved was that she was very oppositional about my speaking and writing. She told me that I would ruin the English language if I wrote. As a really young kid, you have this sense that what your mother is saying is not right, but at the same time she's your mother, and your sense of the world really comes from your parent, right? So it's kind of painful on the brain, whatever. I have this halting speech pattern when I talk about the book or about my mother in part because of that.
Welcome to The Book of Life, a show about Jewish books, music, film, and web. I'm Heidi Estrin. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida. Additional support comes from the Association of Jewish Libraries. Earlier this year, I participated in the Bridget Zinn auction, an online event that raised about $13,000 to help author and librarian Bridget Zinn pay for her treatment for colon cancer. I offered a Book of Life interview as an auction item, removing the usual requirement that there be Jewish content involved. Bids came from different authors with books to promote, including a forthcoming picture book biography of Seminole woman Betty Mae Tigerjumper by Jan Godown Anino, and a book CD set called Heavenly Skies and Lullabies, recorded by Dr. Kathy Riley Fallon to raise money for the Twin Towers Orphan Fund. See bookoflifepodcast.com for links to these interesting projects. The winning bid came from Anne Gonzales, whose book Running for My Life addresses the serious issues of trauma and mental health in a surprisingly readable way. I spoke to Anne by phone at her home in Seattle, Washington. Anne, we're talking today because you put in the winning bid for a Book of Life interview in the Bridget Zinn auction. What got you involved in the auction?
I heard about it through a group of writers. I'm a graduate of the Whidbey Writers Workshop or the Northwest Institute of Literary Arts MFA program, the first MFA degree to be offered by a collective of writers outside of a university. I was in the first graduating class. For me, writing is very difficult, and I only am able to do it because writers are such cool people and good-hearted people, and so when an opportunity comes up to help other writers, I am all for that. I teach an online writing class to kind of pay it forward because I didn't start writing until I was 40, and I wouldn't have been able to write if it hadn't been for other writers supporting me and encouraging me. And so I really I really want to be able to give back to the writing community in the way that they've given to me.
That is very lovely. And to start off with, give us a quick summary of Running for My Life.
It's about a 14-year-old girl whose mother is mentally ill. Mother is in the hospital because she's attacked the girl, and so they've been separated, essentially. That all happens before the book begins. Basically, the book is about a girl with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and her work with a therapist and good friends to kind of deal with the symptoms of PTSD, flashbacks, anxiety, and stress. I like to think of it as a book about the power of friendship, basically. I'm a sufferer of PTSD, and progress is being made. It took a long time before PTSD was recognized in vets. And, now first responders, they understand that first responders have PTSD. But I believe that young people have it at much higher numbers than is recognized. So my hope was to kind of bring the discussion of post-traumatic stress disorder into the teen level, young adult level.
And what drew you to mental illness as a theme you wanted to explore?
My mother was schizophrenic. She's passed away now. I don't know that I would have been able to write the book if she was still alive. So it's been a trauma and an interest of mine, I suppose, all my life. I think mental illness, certainly it can be well treated and people can live full and happy lives, but it also can be a devastating illness that really impacts the entire community of people surrounding the person with mental illness. My mother's schizophrenia wasn't well treated, and we all suffered tremendously for it.
If you've got to have a schizophrenic mom, you should at least be as lucky as the main character of this book, Andrea, who has a super supportive dad and terrific friends and a good therapist. Does Andrea's situation parallel your own growing up years in any way?
Oh, I wish. My father was absent. He was a travel writer. He was overseas most of my growing up, and my parents separated right about the time my mother got very ill. And in part, that's one of the things that I was doing as a way to kind of heal myself, was to write a father that was present. Don't misunderstand, I love my father, and he was truly an inspiration to me in many ways. He has a great wit, and he's smart and a great writer. He also has passed away, but when he and I talked before he died, he said that he just didn't know that things were so bad. But the book definitely is what I wish for young kids. Definitely, at the time I was growing up, therapy was really taboo. And in part, that's what I wanted to do with Running for My Life, was bring the idea of therapy to young people to get them, intrigued by what this relationship is and what the benefit of therapy might be.
Now, toward the beginning of the book, Andrea decides to go out for track, but she breaks her leg and she spends most of the book in a cast. She can't run, but the title of the book is Running for My Life. So can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, there was just a review I got this morning from School Library Journal, and they were quite irritated that the title of the book is Running for My Life, and yet she doesn't run hardly at all. And the original title I had was Shh, 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 which is the sound of running. And I realized that the title was too difficult to say, and you couldn't say it without someone going, what? So I knew I had to change the title. Running for My Life was just what we ended up with.
That's interesting, because I actually thought that you were intentionally being ironic or something. That she can't physically run, but she's emotionally running or something like that.
No, I should adopt that. It's a good way to look at it.
Because I thought that she was emotionally running away, but then maybe when she learns to transfer it into physical running, she can run towards her life instead of away from her life, or I don't know. But anyway, I understand the book had its genesis in the annual NaNoWriMo Challenge. Can you explain what that is and how it helped to spark this book?
National Novel Writing Month. If you take the first few letters of each word, it comes out to NaNoWriMo. Basically, a group of writers, it started out as 29, and now it's over 100,000 people who have a novel in their head that they've always wanted to write, whether you call yourself a writer or not. But people get together during the month of November, and they agree collectively that each of them is going to write 50,000 words or a novel. You go to nanowrimo.org and you just sign up, give yourself a profile. And during the month of November, there are inspirational messages and people do fun things. It happens all over the U.S. and all over the world. It's basically a supportive environment to write. So it was fun. I mean, that was the thing of it. I didn't win. I only wrote 35,000 words, and in order to be considered a winner and get a certificate, you have to write 50,000 words. But I wrote the entire story of Running for My Life. Some of the scenes were really difficult for me to write, so they were very short. And on revision, I actually expanded them, and so now the novel is close to 50,000 words. So all of this is to say that I'm a strong believer in National Novel Writing Month. For me, there's something about the compressed writing where I enter into the character and I let the character take over and write the story. It gets the editor out of the way. It gets the feeling of, I can't do this, all the ways in which we beat ourselves up as writers. I'm a nano-evangelist now. I love to talk about it. I'm going to write a novel every fall because it works for me.
So you've worked on another novel since Running for My Life, and you plan to do one a year. Are you continuing to explore similar themes in your new books?
Yeah. The book that I wrote during this last NaNoWriMo is called Blindfold, about a teenage girl who was kidnapped prior to the beginning of the book. I'm less interested in the trauma itself, but more interested in the after effects of trauma, I think is a recurring theme in my stories. This girl made a promise with her kidnapper that if he let her go, she wouldn't tell anyone what he looked like. And so he lets her go. She wears a blindfold around as a way to basically say she prefers to see the world as she imagines it as opposed to the way it really is. This idea came to me because when I was a young kid, I read a book called Follow My Leader. And if there's any reason why I'm a writer, it's probably this book because it had such a profound impact on me.
Mm-hmm.
It's the story of a teenage boy who loses his eyesight and he gets a seeing eye dog called Leader. And I was so impacted by this story that I used to come home from school and blindfold myself. And as I mentioned, my mother was quite ill, so, there was a certain aspect of that was that I couldn't face reality at home, so I preferred to blindfold myself to what was going on.
Yeah, that's interesting how it all ties together. And it's interesting that in this case, it's not just her dealing with trauma, but also dealing with sort of an ethical question.
Yes. She's fine with not telling anyone until he takes another girl, kidnaps another girl, and then the pressure on her really begins to accelerate.
So, in summary, what do you hope readers will take away with them?
I want young people to, first of all, if they're experiencing pain or suffering in any way, that they realize that they are not alone, that others understand that experience, that there are people, certainly their friends, but also that there are adults who genuinely care and are willing to help. They may just have to find them.
Let me mention that I actually really did enjoy the book, coming from the perspective of somebody who hasn't experienced that sort of trauma, and not reading it for therapeutic purposes. But I thought it was well written and really interesting. So.
Oh, great. I love that.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention is that one of the biggest regrets I have about this book is that I didn't acknowledge Kirby Larson, who is a writer. She wrote Hattie Big Sky, which is a Newbery Honor winner, and she writes picture books. Anyway, she's a great friend to all writers. She was my mentor, and the book wouldn't have been publishable without her guidance and her support. So I wanted to acknowledge Kirby Larson as a great writer, a great friend to writers, because she was so important and is so important to the book, and it truly couldn't have been done without her.
Okay, very nice. Anne Gonzales, thanks so much for speaking with us.
Oh, thank you, Heidi. It's been a pleasure.
There are so many ways to connect with the Book of Life. Fan us at facebook.com/Book of Life Podcast. Follow us at twitter.com/Book of Life Pod. Email us at boooflifepodcast@gmail.com and listen to the latest episode by phone at 916-313-3820. And of course, find links to everything at bookoflifepodcast.com. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida at cbiboca.org and is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilachmakers Klezmer String Band at freilachmakers.com. Thanks for listening and happy reading.